I didn't seek revenge. I simply held up the blueprint, proving that the foundation they built their lives upon was a catastrophic breach of my original design. This is my story.
I have always approached life the way I approach architecture, structurally sound, rigorously planned, and documented meticulously. I am Elara. In my family, this made me the dependable machine, the bank account, and, ultimately, the scapegoat. My brother, Jason, on the golden hand, was the dreamer. He was hailed as creative, visionary, and misunderstood every time he bankrupted another doomed venture, from the high-end dog cologne line to the sustainable bamboo sock empire. The fact that I had a thriving architectural firm was simply confirmation to my parents that I was boring and luckier than Jason, who was merely waiting for his genius to be recognized. The beach house was meant to be the olive branch, the concrete proof that their neglect hadn't broken me, merely focused me. I designed the structure myself, a modern, airy testament to coastal resilience. I didn't just pay for the build, I paid for the land, sourced the materials, and handled the construction financing. I handed them the keys 3 years ago, fully paid, tax-free, debt-free. It was my gift for their retirement. I even titled the property under their names, a gesture I believed would finally earn me peace. I should have known better. Gifts given to the golden child's parents are just resources waiting to be appropriated. The initial friction began subtly. I'd visit the house and notice the constant wear and tear, the repairs they wouldn't lift a finger to fix because they assumed I would handle it. I kept a detailed maintenance log. Receipts, itemized costs, dates of refusal, I filed every interaction. It wasn't about being petty, it was about data collection. The true crisis began 6 months ago when Jason decided his latest grand plan, a decentralized artisanal coffee roasting subscription service requiring massive initial investment in proprietary cooling equipment, needed $200,000 to launch. Predictably, he came to my parents first, then they came to me. My father called me sounding unusually stressed. Elara, we need to discuss Jason's future. This coffee business, it's groundbreaking. But he's short on capital. I listened calmly. My phone was recording the conversation, as I generally record significant financial or emotional exchanges with my family. My voice was level. Dad, I have bank statements showing I gave Jason $45,000 last year for the sustainable sock venture, and the year before, $60,000 for the dog cologne. I have receipts for every penny. I will not fund another failure. My mother took the phone. This isn't funding, Elara. This is investment in your brother's potential. Why are you always so rigid? You have the money. I have the money because I work for it. And no, I will not. The line went cold after that refusal. I didn't hear from them for 3 weeks, which, frankly, felt like a vacation. I assumed they were sulking. I did not assume they were moving forward with the ultimate act of financial violence. The inciting incident arrived not via a phone call, but via a plain white envelope from a title insurance company based 2 states away. It contained a notice of a new security interest filed against the property deed of the beach house. My hands did not shake as I reviewed the documents. The loan was predatory, high interest, and short-term, demanding aggressive payments. The amount? Exactly $200,000. They hadn't just sought funding, they had collateralized the one thing I had designed and paid for, the house I had gifted, without consulting me. They had used my act of generosity as leverage for Jason's incompetence. I printed the documents, 3-hole punched them, and added them to the file labeled Retirement Trust Oversight. I drove immediately to the beach house. When I presented the certified copies of the loan papers, my receipt, my parents didn't look ashamed. They looked cornered. How dare you poke through our private business, Elara, my mother spat. You filed public documents against a property I provided, I corrected, keeping my voice even. This loan is financially ruinous. What happens when Jason inevitably defaults? My father sighed dramatically. We were hoping you'd step up. We assumed that since you designed it, you wouldn't let us lose it. You want me to pay off your fraudulent debt to enable Jason's scam? That was when the mask finally slipped. They didn't see me as their daughter, they saw me as a wallet that had finally closed. Look at you, Elara, my mother sneered. Always talking about receipts and documents. You think your money makes you superior, but you're just cold. You have zero emotional intelligence. Jason, he's warm. He has a future. And what about my house? I asked. It's our house, my father stressed, pointing to the deed I had gifted them. And if we lose it, that's on us. But since you refuse to help, you don't need to visit anymore. We don't want your negativity here. The banishment was delivered with the casual brutality only family can muster. As I walked out, I saw Jason pulling up in a new, absurdly large SUV, already celebrating his funding. The final nail in the emotional coffin came 2 hours later, when I was already halfway home. A text thread containing myself, my mother, and Jason was waiting on my phone. It was a voice memo from my mother. I transcribed the audio file immediately, standard procedure. Asterisk voicemail transcription, file, Mom Jason banished 12-14-23 She, Elara, is just impossible, Jason. So high and mighty with her architecture degree. She actually had the nerve to demand why we would risk her house. Honestly, Jason, you're worth 100 of her soulless houses. She just needs to get over herself. We told her not to come back. We don't need her. We don't want her. It's done. She's useless now that the money machine is shut down. Enjoy the new rig, honey. You deserve it. Asterisk I saved the audio file, the transcription, and the screenshot of the text thread. My parents and Jason believed they had successfully removed the irritating obstruction, me, and secured the funding. They were comfortable in their betrayal. What they failed to understand, in their obsession with the deed I gifted, was that they missed the paperwork on the land. My grandmother, a much wiser woman, had ensured the land beneath the beach house was placed into an irrevocable land trust long before I designed the property. As the sole trustee, and the primary beneficiary, I was the final authority. They held the deed to the structure. I held the deed to the earth it stood upon. They thought they had evicted the scapegoat. They had, in fact, just served notice to their landlord. I filed the eviction papers the next morning. Then I checked the calendar. Jason's wedding, scheduled to take place at their beautiful beach house, was 3 months away. I had plenty of time to ensure my vindication was not just public, but exquisitely inconvenient. I drove away from the beach house that day and archived the voicemail transcription. The emotional ledger was balanced, the final transaction recorded. The feeling was not one of rage, but of profound, clinical emptiness. They had successfully evicted the daughter, but they had fundamentally failed to read the fine print of their lease agreement. My immediate reaction was silence. My parents and Jason were used to my analytical resistance, my detailed rebuttals, and my exhausted attempts to talk sense into them. They expected drama. I gave them structure. I initiated the Grey Rock Protocol. I muted their calls. I archived the text chain. I did not respond to the inevitable flurry of self-pitying or gloating messages that followed the funding of Jason's coffee venture. I stopped fighting the narrative they had constructed, the one where I was the cold, money-obsessed barrier to Jason's success. That was their reality, and if they needed that belief to feel justified in collateralizing my life's work, then they could have it. I needed them to feel safe, complacent, and entirely oblivious. While they were planning color palettes for Jason's upcoming wedding to his fiancée, a sweet woman who had no idea she was marrying into a financial black hole, I was executing the termination of tenancy. The true nature of the property structure was the secret weapon they had dismissed as merely sentimental family history. When my grandmother, bless her pragmatism, left me the initial capital and the prime coastal lot, she included an extraordinary stipulation in her will. My grandmother knew her children, my parents, were fundamentally irresponsible with large assets. Her goal was to ensure her legacy, and my financial future, remained secure. She established an irrevocable land trust. This trust specifically held the deed to the physical earth, the land parcel beneath the coordinates of the beach house structure. When I designed and built the beach house, I followed her structure precisely. I titled the structure, the house itself, the wood, the glass, the fixtures, to my parents as a gift. I never transferred ownership of the land, the foundation, the access roads, the utilities hookup points. That remained solely within the land trust, and I was designated the sole, non-removable trustee and primary beneficiary. In legal terms, they owned the dwelling, but they did not own the ground it stood upon. They were tenants, albeit zero-rent tenants, operating under a proprietary ground lease established at the time of the gift. The terms were simple and non-negotiable. The property must remain debt-free and used exclusively as a personal, non-commercial residence. Any attempt to encumber the land or the structure with external debt constituted a direct, immediate breach of contract. The moment they signed those predatory loan papers, using the structure as collateral for Jason's $200,000 failure, they committed a catastrophic breach of the ground lease agreement. They didn't just mortgage their retirement, they handed me the legal leverage required to dismantle their entire setup. This was the structural flaw in their grand design. They focused on the visible deed I gifted them and ignored the foundational paperwork held in the trust. My architectural firm's legal team worked with remarkable speed and discretion. We didn't just file an eviction notice, we filed a formal lawsuit seeking specific performance under the land trust agreement, demanding the cessation of the lease due to material breach and subsequent immediate termination of tenancy. I began assembling what I mentally dubbed the folder of doom. It was rigorous, indexed, and cross-referenced. Section A, Foundational Breach. The original trust documents, the ground lease agreement, signed by both parents 3 years prior, and the certified copy of the predatory $200,000 loan documents, proving the financial encumbrance. Section B, Malice and Intent. The transcripts and audio files of the banishment voicemail, showing their stated intent to dispose of me now that my resources were exhausted, and their admission that the risk was entirely justified for Jason. Section C, Remedies and Execution. The formal, certified 90-day eviction notice served to them via separate legal counsel, and the accompanying court injunction application. The timeline was exquisite. The mandatory 90-day eviction notice period, coupled with the slow legal service process, ensured that the deadline for vacation fell exactly 2 weeks before Jason's lavish destination wedding, scheduled to take place on the property. My objective was not merely to evict them. It was to use the wedding as the pressure point. The wedding was Jason's ultimate performance, his confirmation that he was a successful man, supported by a loving, devoted family in their spectacular, architect-designed beach home. It was the visual proof they required to justify their choices. I submitted the injunction request to the court, requesting that if the tenants, my parents, failed to vacate the premises by the official termination date, the court issue an order to seize the property and prevent any large-scale assembly or commercial use, such as a paid wedding reception, on the land controlled by the trust. I did not scream. I did not argue. I simply waited for the structure they had built on lies to reach its critical stress point. And I knew exactly when that point would be, the moment the first wedding guest pulled into the driveway of the house built on my land. The 3 months leading up to Jason's wedding were the quietest period of my adult life. To my family, my silence was proof of my defeat. To me, it was the sound of a carefully scheduled legal machine spooling up. The court process proceeded exactly as planned. My parents ignored the formal 90-day eviction notice, treating it as another dramatic display of my pettiness. The lease termination date passed 2 weeks before the wedding. Their legal defense, predictably, was that since I had gifted them the structure deed, I was trying to leverage family sentiment to regain control. They failed to address the ground lease or the trust documents, dismissing them as outdated boilerplate. The judge, reviewing the rigorous documentation, especially the certified copy of the $200,000 predatory loan, saw clearly that the contract had been materially breached. They had monetized my gift and broken the foundational agreement. I secured the court order 2 days before the wedding. It was not a simple eviction order, it was a temporary injunction granting the land trust, me, immediate possession of the property due to ongoing commercial use, holding a paid event, on land owned by the trust, following failure to vacate after due notice. It included authorization for law enforcement to assist in the removal of all unauthorized personnel and equipment. The date was Saturday, June 14th. The setting was the back patio of the beach house, meticulously designed by me to maximize the coastal view, a view they were now attempting to charge hundreds of people to enjoy. I did not receive an invitation. I was not expected. I arrived precisely at 4:30 p.m., 30 minutes after the scheduled start time for the reception, dressed not in wedding attire, but in a tailored, charcoal gray suit that communicated professional authority. In my hand, I carried a sleek, architectural portfolio case. Inside was the folder of doom. The scene was exactly the kind of financial theatricality Jason thrived on. Massive floral installations, a 5-piece string ensemble, and a sprawling, gourmet buffet. The parking lot was full of luxury cars, all belonging to the investors Jason hoped to impress or the creditors he was trying to evade. The $200,000 had bought them a very expensive, temporary stage. I bypassed the velvet ropes and the nervous young event coordinator. I walked around the perimeter, clinically assessing the unauthorized use of the property. The string ensemble was positioned on the deck supports I had specified. The catering trucks were illegally parked on the landscaped trust property. Every detail was a quantified breach. I found my parents near the head table, basking in the attention. They looked like movie stars, relieved of any financial consequence, secure in the knowledge that they had successfully bankrupted their responsible daughter to elevate their useless son. My mother saw me first. Her smile froze, replaced by a tight, hostile mask. She marched toward me, her silk dress rustling aggressively. "What in God's name are you doing here, Elara?" she hissed, keeping her voice low but laced with pure venom. "You are not welcome. You were told you are not welcome." "I am aware of the conversation," I replied calmly. "I am here in my capacity as trustee of the grandmother's land trust, not as a guest." My father joined us, his face flushing with fury. He adopted the tone he used when trying to sound like a Wall Street magnate. "This is highly inappropriate, Elara. This is Jason's day. You want to cause a scene? We will call security." "You already have," I noted, gesturing to the 3 black-suited, bulky men standing near the catering tent. "They are security. But they are contracted to Jason and the caterer. They do not supersede court orders." Jason, looking bloated and arrogant in his custom tuxedo, drifted over. He leaned close to me, smelling faintly of expensive cologne and cheap desperation. "Look who decided to crawl back," Jason mocked, loud enough for a few nearby guests to turn their heads. "Couldn't stand being left out, could you? Did you come to beg for a spot at the table? Maybe you can help refill champagne, Elara. You're good at serving." A nervous, sycophantic laugh track went up from the small group of investors surrounding him. My mother beamed. This was the exact public shaming they had wanted to inflict. They wanted me to admit I had lost. I met Jason's eyes. I did not flinch. "I did not come to serve, Jason. I came to collect." My mother scoffed. "You don't own this house, Elara. We showed you the deed. We know the law. Get off our property before we have the police remove you for trespassing." This was the irony I had waited months for. They were so fixated on the visible, paper deed to the structure that they completely forgot about the invisible, unmoving foundation. "I have not trespassed," I corrected, pulling the architectural portfolio case closer. My voice remained perfectly flat, devoid of emotion, making the truth sound all the more terrifying. You own the structure. I own the land. As of 2 weeks ago, you breached your contract and became unauthorized occupants. You are squatting on the land trust property. My father sneered. Nonsense. This is just more of your legal posturing. Go home, Elara. The only eviction you're getting is from this family. Perhaps, I said, looking over my father's shoulder toward the street access. But the legal posturing stops now. The court agreed with the land trust. And I am simply waiting for the enforcement team to arrive and execute the warrant. Jason actually laughed, a high, manic sound. Enforcement team? Are you serious? You think you can stop my wedding with some fictional court order? We're throwing a $500,000 party, Elara. Nobody is shutting this down. Just as the string ensemble began the intro to the bridal march, signaling the arrival of Jason's fiancée, I heard it, the distinct, low rumble of two official, unmarked, heavy-duty vehicles pulling onto the gravel access road. I lifted my wrist, checked my watch, and looked directly at my parents. No, Jason, I stated. I'm not shutting it down. The court is. And here is their official messenger. A tall, uniformed man, a county sheriff's marshal, stepped out of the lead vehicle, carrying a clipboard. He glanced at the lavish scene, then walked directly toward the head table. I need to speak with the owners of the structure located at 144 Shoreline Drive immediately, the marshal announced, his voice carrying easily over the soft music. My parents looked utterly paralyzed. The silence that fell across the patio was total. I opened my portfolio, retrieved the laminated, certified copy of the injunction, and walked toward the marshal, extending the document. That would be me, I confirmed coolly, nodding toward the portfolio. I'm Elara. I hold the authority of the land trust. I'm the one who ordered the execution. The marshal, a man with the weary efficiency of bureaucracy, took the laminated sheet from my hand. He held it up slightly so the sunlight caught the official seal. The small, private wedding party went utterly silent. Even the caterers stopped mid-pour. I am Marshal Rourke, County Enforcement Division, he announced, his voice surprisingly robust without amplification. This order is a temporary injunction, filed and authorized this morning, effective immediately. The land trust which holds title to this parcel of land has secured a seizure order due to ongoing material breach of contract and the commercial use of unauthorized property. My mother found her voice first, high-pitched and hysterical. This is our daughter. This is a stunt. We own this house. We have the deed. Ma'am, the structural deed is irrelevant to the legal standing of the land it occupies, the marshal replied, not breaking eye contact with my father. Are you the signatory parties, Mr. and Mrs. last name? My father, pale and sweating, stammered, why yes, but we own the house outright. I stepped forward, extending my hand toward the head table where the DJ equipment was situated. Marshal, with the court's permission, I request access to the house sound system. I believe a public clarification of the property structure will expedite the process and prevent further delay. Rourke looked at the sea of bewildered guests, then back at my perfectly composed expression. He nodded to a nervous DJ technician. I walked to the microphone stand. I checked the level, adjusted the stand slightly, always structurally sound, and tapped the mic twice. The resulting thump-thump echoed over the silent patio. Good evening, everyone, I began, my voice perfectly modulated, calm and utterly devoid of triumph. Welcome to 144 Shoreline Drive. For those of you who don't know me, I am Elara. I designed this house 3 years ago, and gifted the structure to my parents for their retirement. I watched Jason, who was now vibrating with panicked rage, try to intercept me. My father grabbed his arm, restraining him. They knew, intuitively, that any aggression would only worsen the optics. My parents are correct, I continued. They hold the deed to the physical wood and glass, the house structure. However, they signed a ground lease agreement with the land trust that holds the deed to the foundational earth beneath us. That trust was established by my grandmother and is now under my sole trusteeship. I paused, allowing the guests, many of whom were Jason's potential business investors, to process the unusual legal arrangement. The terms of the lease were simple: the property must remain debt-free and for personal, residential use only. 3 months ago, my parents, prioritizing my brother Jason's latest commercial venture, knowingly took out a predatory $200,000 loan, collateralizing the structure in direct breach of the lease agreement. That loan was secured so Jason could fund his decentralized artisanal coffee roasting subscription service. A few murmurs broke out among the financial-looking guests. $200,000 to roast coffee sounded exactly like the kind of unsustainable expenditure that marked a bad investment risk. Jason finally broke free of my father's grasp and lunged for the microphone. "She's lying. This is jealousy. She's always tried to ruin me." I simply stepped back, allowing the marshal to smoothly intercept Jason, placing a firm, non-violent hand on his shoulder. "Mr. Jason, step away from the equipment," Rourke warned. I returned to the microphone. "To those of you who believe this is merely jealousy, I offer Exhibit B, intent and malice." I held up my phone, connecting it briefly to the PA system. The voice memo, transcribed months ago as file Mom Jason Banished 12-14-23, played clearly over the speakers, shocking in its casual cruelty. Asterisk, audio playback. Mother's voice, clear and cold. "She, Elara, is just impossible, Jason. So high and mighty with her architecture degree. She actually had the nerve to demand why we would risk her house. Honestly, Jason, you're worth 100 of her soulless houses. She just needs to get over herself. We told her not to come back. We don't need her. We don't want her. It's done. She's useless now that the money machine is shut down. Enjoy the new rig, honey. You deserve it." Asterisk. The silence that followed this recording was crushing. This wasn't a jealous sister trying to stop a wedding. This was a daughter who had been clinically discarded the moment she ceased being a financial resource. My mother stared at me, her face contorted with a mixture of disbelief and pure, undiluted hatred. You recorded that?" "Yes, Mother," I confirmed, disconnecting the phone. Standard procedure for high-stakes financial and emotional exchanges. I looked out at the guests. Their faces had shifted from polite confusion to horrified understanding. The wealthy investors were now looking at Jason, the golden boy, with open disgust. They hadn't just invested in a bad business, they were associated with a fundamentally rotten family. I retrieved the final document from my portfolio, a plain manila envelope. The land trust offered a 90-day cure period, followed by a formal eviction notice, I concluded. They failed to comply. As of today, the land trust is exercising its right to possession. This means the structure and its contents must be vacated immediately. Furthermore, this reception is an unauthorized commercial event on trust property, necessitating the immediate termination of services. I walked directly to my father, who looked utterly defeated, the Wall Street mask having melted into the face of a frightened man. I handed him the envelope. "This is your official notice to vacate," I stated, completely levelly. "You have 48 hours to remove all personal property from the structure. After that, the land trust will change the locks and begin the process of foreclosure to resolve the predatory loan you took out." My mother let out a small, choked sound. Marshal Rourke stepped up, taking the microphone from me. "All unauthorized personnel, including the catering staff, florists, and guests, are required to vacate the premises immediately. Security teams will ensure all exits are cleared within the next 20 minutes. This wedding reception is officially terminated." As the guests scrambled for their luxury vehicles, whispering furiously, and Jason's fiancée finally appeared, tearfully realizing the financial black hole she had stepped into, I turned my back on them. My job was done. I walked past my broken family, past the wilting floral arrangements, and back toward the unmarked enforcement vehicles. I had been banished as the scapegoat. I returned as the landlord. And my lease terms were not negotiable. The execution of the eviction was as clean and precise as the blueprints for the beach house itself. Marshal Rourke and his team ensured that the remaining catering equipment was loaded, the string ensemble packed up their instruments, and the entire wedding spectacle was dismantled within the hour. The final, agonizing image for my parents was seeing their son, Jason, still in his custom tuxedo, standing dumbfounded next to a moving truck labeled Storage Solutions. I spent the next 2 days working with the land trust's lawyers. We officially took possession of the property. The house structure, which my parents technically owned, was now situated on land they were forbidden to access. The land trust immediately initiated the foreclosure process on the structure to clear the predatory loan they had secured. This was the final, devastating consequence. They would not only lose the land, but the house structure itself would be liquidated to pay off Jason's $200,000 failure. The immediate aftermath was, predictably, not about remorse or self-reflection, it was about damage control and desperation. They started with my phone, a relentless barrage of calls, texts, and emails. My father tried the financial angle, Elara, this is lunacy. Think of the tax implications. You're foreclosing on your own gift. We can work this out. Just pay the $200,000, and we can reset the lease. My mother went straight for the emotional jugular, attempting to leverage the shame I had delivered. You humiliated us. Your grandmother would be rolling in her grave. You are destroying this family. We need a place to live, Elara. We are homeless. And Jason, true to form, tried to appeal to my sense of duty toward his genius. This coffee thing is still viable. The investors were just spooked by your insane theatrics. Just settle this debt, and I can salvage the business. We are family. I answered none of them directly. Instead, I drafted one final, non-negotiable communication, reviewed by my legal counsel, and sent it via certified mail and simultaneous text. Communication transcription, file, final_no_contact_06-16-24 parents' names, and Jason ***. This communication serves as notice that all financial and personal ties between us are permanently severed. The land trust is proceeding with foreclosure on the structure to resolve the debt you knowingly incurred, which was in material breach of the ground lease. You will receive all further information regarding the liquidation of assets via your legal representatives, ***. The intent behind your actions, collateralizing my life's work for Jason's unsustainable venture, and your subsequent vocal dismissal of me as useless once I refuse to pay, is fully documented in file, Mom Jason Banished 12-14-23, which you heard played at the wedding. That recording confirmed the termination of my relationship with you, emotionally and structurally, ***. The foundation of trust has irrevocably failed. I am moving forward with a permanent no-contact protocol. Any future attempt to reach me, directly or indirectly, will be documented and treated as harassment. I wish you the best in adjusting to the natural consequences of your choices, Elara, last name, trustee, Shoreline Land Trust, ***. I sent the message, saved the transcript, and then initiated the final, liberating act. I blocked all 3 of them on my phone, email, and social media. The silence that followed was not merely the absence of nagging, it was the sound of a perfectly finished blueprint. I had always believed that a structure is only as strong as its foundation. They had built their entire world on a faulty foundation of entitled dependency, and when I, the architect of their stability, refused to shore up their faulty design, the entire edifice collapsed. The beach house, now legally mine to manage, would not stand empty. I offered it as a professional retreat for my architectural firm, ensuring the space I had designed was used ethically and purposefully. My fiancé, Mark, an engineer who appreciates the rigor of documentation, raised a glass to me that evening. You didn't just win, Elara, he said, wrapping me in a hug that felt more like home than any blood relationship ever had. You achieved structural integrity. My biological family, now truly banished, were forced to reckon with their own incompetence. Jason's coffee venture collapsed immediately, his creditors and former investors now keenly aware of his deep-seated financial irresponsibility. My parents faced a reality where their retirement funds were decimated by moving costs, legal fees, and the shame of having to start over, without their permanent, silent financial resource. I closed the file labeled Retirement Trust Oversight. It was complete. I had established my freedom, not by fighting fire with fire, but by simply holding up the contract. I had always been the boring one who kept the receipts, and in the end, the receipts proved to be my most powerful design tool.